Welcome back. In this video, I will be offering you some basic tools for your role as a substitute in a Montessori classroom, including clarity about your role, and in particular, your responsibility to assist in respectful and effective child guidance. Typically, substitutes step into any position covering a lead or co-guide or support staff, yet they behave as an assistant. Rarely would a substitute be alone with the students without another more familiar and seasoned Montessori adult. It is your role to defer to the other adult, and this workshop is designed to share some best practices so you can be the best of support to the students and the other adult right away. In conventional education, the assistant typically works with one child at a time, while the teacher manages the whole group. In contrast, assistants in Montessori classrooms supervise the whole group, so the teacher can work with a smaller subgroup or an individual learner without interruption. The substitute role and lead guide's role are mutually beneficial to each other and to the children. The primary role of the substitute is to maintain the harmony of the learning environment. This is not an invitation for a substitute to create or enforce rules as they wish, but to build an understanding of the class routines and procedures that follow the lead of the other adult. I break down the harmony of the environment into several factors, and I invite you to notice whether the physical environment is safe and well maintained. Is there a sense of order and beauty? Do you notice a broken material or a plant that needs to be watered? You can ask a child what to do before proactively setting it right. How about the social climate? Is the volume so high that you cannot hear the child next to you? Does it seem like there are a lot of unresolved conflicts or charged emotions? How about the spiritual climate? Can you feel an imbalance in the atmosphere of control or joylessness or chaotic energy? Is there a palpable hum of cognitive busyness? A principle of optimal learning states that particular forms of adult interactions are more conducive to the well-being of the child. And educator Haim Janot said, how parents and teachers talk tells a child about how they feel about them. Their statements affect their self-esteem and self-worth. To a large extent, their language determines their destiny. As an adult in a Montessori environment, you have tremendous power and influence on a child's well-being. Your tone, your emotional state, your ability to redirect, and your understanding of how the child's sense of belonging and significance will set the stage for effective interactions. Your emoting has a direct influence on the child's learning from the moment you walk in the door until you connect them back with their adult. I was reminded each day in the classroom of this power I wield and learned to check my own affect by placing a printed copy of this next quote in the cupboard in my teacher supply area of the classroom. From Haim Janot. He said, "I am the decisive element in my classroom. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, a child humanized or dehumanized." So as you can see, this work begins with us. For us as adults to recognize and adjust our affect, to see the child before us, to create the conditions by which a student feels secure. So when it comes to child guidance, I believe we must reflect on our own upbringing to investigate our default constructs, the ones that we grew up with and tend to appear at a moment's notice. I was raised in the 1970s and 80s by my parents, whom were raised in the 1950s. Their discipline style was fairly permissive, with a dose of shaming to keep my sisters and myself in line when we misbehaved. Their approach was mostly effective at gaining compliance from my older sister and me, although when my younger sister came along, no amount of shaming seemed to guide her to do the right thing. When I became a teacher and parent and reflected upon discipline, I realized there had to be a more effective and respectful approach, an approach that would instill self-discipline and self-respect in our children, rather than having external controls for behavior. And then I stumbled upon a guidance approach called positive discipline, founded by Dr. Jane Nelson and Lynn Watt, and based on the work of Alfred Adler and his student Rudolf Dreikurs. Positive discipline has as its mission to educate teachers and parents in how to apply effective and respectful guidance for their children. Dr. Nelson identifies that there are 5 basic criteria for guidance to be respectful and effective. The very first criteria is to be kind and firm, the balance between the punitive and the permissive. This fine balance is constantly being juggled by the adult by reflecting and practicing and communicating. The second criteria Dr. Nelson covers is to help children develop a sense of belonging and significance. The third criteria is that these tools of discipline need to work long-term. We know that punishment might work in gaining compliance in the short term, but it's not long-lasting, nor does it lead to self-discipline. The fourth criteria for positive discipline is that the discipline needs to invoke valuable social and life skills for the child. The fifth criteria is that through this guidance, children develop a sense that they are capable, that they can do it themselves. So as you can imagine, these criteria depend on a balance of the gentle, nurturing side and the firm but kind structure that children depend upon. If you're too permissive, children will lose respect and you lose compliance. And if you're too strict or punishing, the children lose their spirit and you've squashed it. So I'm going to give you a tool right now to increase your advocacy and optimize your interactions with children. Something you can do tomorrow. So one of the most powerful tools you have in your toolkit to influence a child is to smile. Sounds simple, right? Well, it's verifiably effective. You see, you have specialized cells in your brain that are called mirror neurons, the mechanisms that cause an infant to stick out their tongue when they see another do so, and the ability for a child to learn just by watching another. When you genuinely smile and gaze into another's eyes, you are changing the chemical transmitters that spark another's brain to become more positive. Your role is to maintain an atmosphere of freedom within limits, a place where respect for the child is infused in the environment and in every interaction with others, where their rights are recognized and nourished, transforming each child and the community. So many adults desperate for compliance from a misbehaving child revert to bribery or threat. Yet another crucial principle of optimal learning that is also evident in Montessori classrooms states that choosing extrinsic rewards to activities negatively impacts motivation to engage in those activities. Carrots and sticks, rewards and punishment are motivators that are extrinsic. They are coming from an outside source, whereas intrinsic rewards come from within. The part of the brain that curbs impulsive behavior and is responsible for self-regulation is that prefrontal cortex, the last part of the brain to fully form. And it takes years of practice for some children to gain control of their behavior, and understanding motivation might help you in guiding them appropriately. Foremost investigator of motivation, Daniel Pink, wrote in his book, Drive, The Surprising Truth About Motivation, that rewards or punishment don't work to motivate learners or behaviors. And in fact, these extrinsic motivators decrease motivation in learning or regulating behavior. Pink brought together years of research from a variety of scientists, not only into the corporate world, but from educational systems. So here's a quick doodly and a story about motivation. As is typical in Montessori elementary classrooms, our students worked out community problems together at a democratically held class meeting. The meetings were student-led. I listened in and would guide when necessary now and then. In this particular class meeting, it was noted that the classroom chores that are done by the students weren't being tended to like everybody wanted them. Pencils were rarely sharpened, the shelves were dusty, and no one wanted to empty the dishwasher. And everyone wanted to take out and sort the recycling. The goal of the meeting was to sort out who does what when. The solution the students decided on their own was to create what they called a marble jar. The marble jar was an incentive program. For every chore completed, they would get to drop a marble in the jar. When the jar was full, then they would have a party. So, on the first day of their program, all the chores were completed and in record time. Everyone was feeling really good about their marble that day. The second week, chores were done and even faster than the day before, but maybe with less precision. Some children had opted out as they decided that they'd rather not do the chore or have a party. By the third week, I was fielding complaints because all the chores were being done by just a handful of students. Children were complaining that the classroom wasn't as clean as before the marble jar, and a few revealed it really wasn't as pleasant to be working in class anymore because it was dirty and unprepared for their lessons. Why wasn't the proverbial carrot, in this case a marble, incentivizing the students is revealed in this next principle of optimal learning. Intrinsic reward in Montessori environments are inherent in the child and the environment. However, it's the prepared adult who must strive to create an environment free from rewards and punishment by trusting the child's natural drive for meaningful engagement. You see, children work for work's sake, and they don't need to be thanked or praised for the things they do. Their motivation for meaningful work goes down the more they're rewarded. They are motivated to learn and direct themselves. And adults in Montessori limit their feedback to meaningful and specific things that they spend more time encouraging and noticing when progress is made. That difference between praise and encouragement. So the more we understand the conditions for intrinsic motivation that include purpose, autonomy, and mastery, the more effective we are in guiding children. Dr. Montessori seemed to know this already as she shared in The Secret of Childhood. Long experience only confirmed our first intuition. The teacher even reached a state where she felt ashamed to reward or punish children who seemed indifferent to either treatment. What was even more surprising was their frequent refusal of a reward. This marked an awakening in the conscious of a sense of dignity that had not previously existed. Eventually, we gave up either punishing or rewarding the children. So back to your role. The substitute assistant is there to ensure that the overall running of the classroom is smooth, so that the teacher is able to give uninterrupted lessons, and the children that need adult support receive it from you, from the assistant. However, that being said, your number one job is what we call overview, a whole collection of supervisory skills, the supervision of the whole. Overview as a verb is observing the entire environment with the goal of offering minimal assistance when necessary to support each child's whole development. It is intended primarily to keep children safe. Overview is used to notice where children work, how they work, what they're working on, and to notice where disorder in the environment needs to be reordered. Your role is to support transitions and group times, and your overview informs your redirection or reframing for the child that is in need of your assistance. So here's a few overview techniques. Your presence should always be quietly known by the children. They will know if you are an active observer rather than passive, and whether you're available to their needs or not, based on your body language. If you are leaning on a piece of furniture, hands in your pockets, shoulders and chin down, they might behave as if they should be getting away with something. Standing alertly but relaxed with your hands at your side or behind you, and sometimes a gentle, slow walk through the environment does the trick to deliver the message of, I'm alert and watchful. Rather than standing in the middle of the environment, the tent effect, find a sweet spot along the perimeter of the room where you can observe all the parts of the classroom. This helps you avoid that tent syndrome where you become the center pole and therefore the object of attention. When you need to intervene individually with a child or the environment, do so. Then return to your sweet spot. Your eyes should roam the room without your personal power intruding into any child's work cycle. Avoid eye contact with a concentrating child if they don't need your intervention. If you're alerted to a child in need from afar, make eye contact and see if a gesture like a smile or a raised eyebrow, or maybe a sign for help, might assist them without leaving your spot. While you are standing to overview, the teacher can be engaged in a lesson. It's imperative that the teacher be able to deliver uninterrupted lessons. It is your role to intervene with children that are trying to interrupt that lesson. Powerful overview skills will enable this. Move slowly and carefully through the environment, modeling the movement you expect from the children. Walk to a child, squat or kneel to gain eye contact if they're very young, and speak directly and softly to them. Talking across the classroom should be reserved for the direst of emergencies, as it will interrupt everyone. I sometimes hear shushing in some classrooms, like shh. To me, that feels quite disrespectful. And shushing is actually much louder than other techniques that I've described. Instead, consider walking around the classroom, tap a shoulder, and signing the word for quiet. Or bring a message of solidarity and softly ask the child to help us create a quieter classroom so everyone can concentrate. I'd advise that you carry a clipboard or a journal for noting observations. You might also have a sweet spot and a designated observation chair, so that your notes give you a third point to concentrate on when undue attention, when children that are demanding your attention are looking to you. The practicality of your everyday life with children in a Montessori environment isn't just in the classroom. There are transitions throughout the day. Children transition from one place to another, either from the classroom to the playground back to the classroom, from group time to lunchtime, from walking down the hallway to a specials class, going on a field trip, and more. All these transitions for children can cause a huge amount of strife and stress. Your role as a substitute is to know the class schedule and anticipate each transition. Collaborate with the other adults in the classroom and know your specific role in the transition so you can be of support. Enter the transition with a calm demeanor and a huge dose of flexibility. Now that you have a sense of the importance of the quality of interactions with students in the classroom, let's address the misbehaviors you're likely to encounter and some ideas of what to do. As an adult, you may be unfamiliar to the students you're assisting, or maybe you're in a new role with children with whom you have an existing relationship, and you might be in a position to redirect or to manage what seems like misbehavior. Yet, if we look at all behavior as being a form of communication, it seems even more important to find the root cause of this social misfire. The best guidance tool we can utilize to understand root causes of behavior is observation. For every misbehavior a child exhibits, there are a series of questions that the adult must ask of themselves and sometimes of the child to better understand what's going on based on their observations before deciding what kind of intervention to take or not. It seems almost counterintuitive in the moment the child is misbehaving, yet oftentimes the time you take to observe and unpack the root cause often diffuses the situation. So the first step is on us, the adult, to reflect and ask ourselves, what is my emotional state? What need is this child trying to communicate? How can I meet their unmet need or redirect their behavior or reframe it in a way that helps the child? So the next set of questions we need to ask are based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What physical needs are not being met? Are they hungry, thirsty, tired, wet, or needing the bathroom? Are they hurt or getting sick? Maybe asking them directly may work, but sometimes you just need someone to prepare a glass of water and hand it to you to know that you're thirsty. Getting to know the child helps us identify their needs often before they do. The idea that we must connect before we correct is essential. Is the child experiencing or displaying what's called a misguided goal? Rudolf Dreikurs was an American psychologist who investigated root causes of children's seeming misbehaviors. He saw that most misbehaviors were driven by a sense of needing to belong to a social group, and that misbehaviors ensue when there is a misguided goal to help them feel like they belong. Here are 4 primary misguided goals: attention, power, withdrawal, and revenge. To investigate the child's misbehavior, the adult must ask themselves how the misbehavior of the child is making the adult feel. The adult feelings often lead us to clues that assist us in understanding which misguided goal is in use and to understand the coded message the child is trying to give. So for instance, are you feeling annoyed, worried, guilty, or irritated by a behavior? Is the child's behavior seeming to tell you, I belong only when you pay attention to me? Their coded message is, notice me, involve me usefully. Are they seeking misguided power? Are you feeling challenged, threatened, or defeated? Is the child's behavior seem to be telling you, I'm the boss, or at least I won't let you boss me? Their coded message is, let me help, give me choices. Or might the child be seeking revenge? Are you feeling hurt, disappointed, or disgusted? Is their behavior telling you, I feel hurt and will hurt you back? Their coded message is, I'm hurting, validate my feelings. Or are they seeking assumed inadequacy? Are you feeling despair, hopeless, helpless, or inadequate yourself? Does their behavior seem to be telling you, I can't do anything right, I give up, leave me alone? Their coded message may be, don't give up on me, show me a small step. So what do you do? I would suggest that you lean on a stepped process of increased intervention intended to guide most situations. And I have several action steps for you in considering whether or not you intervene and how. So let's take a look at the first action. And it might feel unnatural or even an oxymoron, yet the first action is one of inaction. I'd suggest that you take this route if the child is in an interaction with another child and their words are being used to resolve conflict. When a child that is in deep concentration and isn't hurting anyone and doesn't really need your intervention, you wait. The next step may be the most powerful, and that is nonverbal. Making eye contact, raising your eyebrow, giving a wink, opening your hands or your arms to the child, squatting to the child's eye level, pointing to where you want the child to place an object, or looking deep into their eyes with genuine love may be all that child needs to reset themselves and put them back on track. Another nonverbal technique is with permission to put a hand on the child's shoulder with increasing pressure. The next step of increased intervention when the situation warrants is the one that we often need the most practice with. The verbal reminder might be about a classroom rule. Things like walking feet, gentle touches, normal voice inside. And you may have noticed I'm stating the positive of what you want from the child. It's not, don't run, or don't talk to me that way, or that's too loud. You see, stating what you need from the child is very important because it helps me not assume what they need. So I don't use you need, and you might also notice that I don't end any of these statements with okay, because it's not up for agreement. You're upholding already agreed upon rules for the community. Here's some examples. When your work rug is rolled, then you may choose another work. It's a great example of a when-then statement. When your shoes are on, then we can go outside. Remember, children are meeting their own needs and verbalizing what they may not see themselves as a need, and a sequence of events highlights causality and usually engenders their compliance. When Jeremy is finished, then you may have your turn. It's often more effective with a child or even an adult as you're referring to a third point outside of self. In this case, the third point is time itself. It's time to use the toilet, or sometimes just the words toilet is enough to motivate the child. Oftentimes, the adult is sportscasting or being the commentator, especially with the younger children. And a great example might sound like, Sylvia has the cube in her hands. I see your hands want to hold it. Would you like a turn when she's finished? I see that Honor has tears. I think he'd like to problem solve with you. Remember, it's not a free-for-all. It's freedom within limits. And I'd like to pause for a moment and notice how all the suggestions I just gave you are stating demands of the child. And when overused, sound like Montessori nagging. So consider using curiosity questions in combination with noticing statements such as, I noticed your peers are at the class meeting. Is there something that is holding you up? Or, I hear the anger in your voice. Can we figure out a way to get your needs met too? You may also be in a position to support emotional regulation of a child. Or what's very common is to facilitate conflict resolution between students that often need emotional support. So our goal is to both validate the child's feelings while drawing clear boundaries. A clear and effective process for supporting emotional regulation is first to make space for the child and sometimes yourself to calm down. Speak directly to the child and invite them to share their feelings, their needs, and any requests that they might have. Using I language, as in, I feel, I need, and I wish. Listen carefully, then offer help. Here's a few more nuanced suggestions. Although emotional independence is a decades-long process for many, there are a few simple ways we can cultivate self-regulation. Yet before you can do so, you must give the child a moment to calm themselves. A couple of great techniques I rely on include squatting to eye level and emphasizing diaphragmatic breathing with one hand on my heart and another one on my belly. Sometimes dramatically touching my nose for an inhale and mouth for an exhale helps. But maybe my favorite is a measured breathing technique of tracing the fingers on my hand. If breathing doesn't seem to calm them enough to connect, then a glass of water might. So once they're responding to you, then you can work with the problem at hand. Communicating your observations of where children need more assistance in their environment will enable your lead guide to bring relevant, useful lessons into the culture, including ones for social emotional regulation. So in the last video in this workshop, join me in an exploration of qualities of an effective substitute, along with some suggestions as how to be even more effective in your position. And I'll see you there.